We're just going to move on to our next guest now and our next topic area. Over the last week, other than COVID, the headlines have been full of the sealing of mother and baby home files for 30 years by the state, and in particular by Minister Roderick O'Gorman. I would like to speak to independent journalist and campaigner Fintan Dunne on the subject matter. Are you there, Fintan? How are you?
I am indeed, Finbar, and thanks very much for your interest in the subject. It's really appreciated.
Yeah, and the first time I got interested in this subject, and I think it's really important that we do mention her, was with your partner, Kathy. And Kathy and I developed an online relationship just talking about activism and that for quite a long time, and I got to know you through that. And unfortunately, Kathy passed away. Is it a couple of years ago now, Fintan?
Yes, in May of 2018.
Yeah, and she's sadly missed, but you are carrying on her mantle, and I just thought it was important to mention her since the kind of three of us are here together tonight in a way. Fintan,
exactly.
What the hell is going on with this mother and baby files business? Sealing of files for 30 years. Can you give us a little bit of background to that?
Okay, well, let's get into the politics, the news politics of today. It's predictable that they would do this because they've always indicated through the delays in the Commission of Investigation that they weren't serious about looking into these issues. We're 6 years on, after all, from when the Tuam scandal first broke. And that has been what Catherine Connolly described in the Dáil today as ongoing abuse of the community affected by mother and baby homes, because the wounds are open, Finbar, and that means that these people are going through continuing trauma because of the fact that we haven't got closure on this, and they need that closure. So today's action was very predictable, and Roderick O'Gorman steeled himself, and he faced down the criticism that was coming left, right and centre that was saying that he had sold out, that he was now effectively acting at the behest of the civil servants in the department who want this stuff locked away because they don't want the evidence around. And, they've denied basic rights of memorialization and archiving of this information in a proper manner. All of this should have been done. We should have had all of this in place, and instead of which the government announced a rushed procedure to lock away. It's not all the files, it's a portion of the mother and baby home files.
The real is there a particular type of file that they're locking away, Fintan?
It's the databases, the database which was used by the Commission of Investigation to coordinate its work, so to speak, which would be of inestimable benefit for any investigation of this issue or any historical examination, or even for the survivors themselves as resources into their own heritage, their own background, in the case of adopted individuals, etc. But the secret as to why this is being done is that they want to hand the files to TUSLA. TUSLA, many people and many speakers in the Dáil today described as a discredited organisation in terms of its handling of this issue and other issues, including Maurice McCabe. And we've heard parliamentary investigation inquiries be very critical of TUSLA, yet the department is determined to hand the files to them. I'll just quote David Norris, who was outraged some years ago in the Seanad when he heard of it. He said, "What on earth are we doing handing the files to the very organisations which were engaged in taking these children in the first place?" TUSLA being, if you like, the inheritors of that social work infrastructure of the state, which took these infants. So it's an attempt to get TUSLA in charge of the files. And this is terrible because it's making the survivors jump through hoops again in order to get their files. And the department wants its finger on the files so that it can... Yeah, go ahead.
And we have, on the one hand, and this is where it can be confusing for people who are just looking at general media reporting on this. On the one hand, we have campaigners who are saying that this bill that I believe has passed through the Dáil, it's gone through the Seanad at this stage, that this bill will in effect deny them access to their information. When I say them, I mean victims and families of the victims. But on the other side, if you listen to Roderick O'Gorman on RT News yesterday and today, it would sound like, no. All victims and families will still have access to files that TUSLA hold, and the rest will be archived. Where's the truth in this?
The truth is that the government is very good at creating a false dichotomy, at presenting itself as having to try and balance competing interests, Finbar, don't you know, and just trying to act in the best general interest of all with these competing interests. The most famous example of that was they were saying that, you know, open access to files could really interfere with the rights of mothers who were told they'd never be contacted, who were guaranteed anonymity when they gave up their children. And after all, we have to respect that, don't we? Of course, that's a complete fiction, because 99% of these children were taken forcibly, and the women, rather than being guaranteed anonymity, were threatened to just go away and never inquire after their offspring again. So it's a false dichotomy presented, and the reality is denial of the human rights of access to your own information. That's what we really should be doing. That's what we're signed up to internationally in human rights agreements. We're not doing it.
So it's gone through the Dáil, gone through the Shannon, and it would appear from news reports today that haven't gone through those two processes, and I'm told that it was sped through the Dáil as quickly as possible through the houses of the Oireachtas. What can campaigners do now? If it's gone that far, it just needs a signature from the president. What can campaigners at this stage do to try and reopen them files?
Well, all of that really, it was an awful lot of attention on a small subset of the overall files. And that's what the department would say if you asked them too. And that's true. The preponderance of these files and other files which were the subject matter of previous state investigations all needs reform, and in the future I'm confident they will be reformed. This is a stopgap measure. It's a smash and grab raid by the department to try and gain control of these files, but in the long term it's not sustainable. After all, in the next 7 to 10 days, the Commission of Investigation report, 6 years in the waiting, has to be handed over before the 30th of this month to the minister, and he will have to publish it hopefully soon thereafter. This will be the evidence in many ways that we need to prove what's been going on. And that investigation was a delaying tactic of 6 years. Finbar, did we need an investigation to tell us that there had been mother and baby homes, to tell us what had gone on in them, to tell us the coercion that was involved, to tell us the destruction of lives that was involved, to tell us the anguish and separation that has gone down the years, and the ongoing hurt and pain in so many? Everyone knows this. And so the government saying, oh, I tell you what, we'll have a commission to look into it, was a delaying tactic to delay all this for 6 years. So really that 6-year delay is over. It's game on again. We're back in business. We want that report out quickly. And the other thing we want is something that Cathy McMahon, who worked, as you say, with so many survivors, she had an online relationship with you, and she was so good online, which is a great way of contacting survivors who may find any other contact too intimidating. But as part of her work, she also researched, and one day she turned to me and asked me, was it genocide what they did to us? I thought about it for a second. I went and looked, and believe it or not, Finbar, in the Genocide Act, which is the International Criminal Court Act 2006, it specifically mentions taking and forcibly transferring children from the target group of the genocide to others is one of the signatures of genocide. So we wrote to the Attorney General back in 2017, charging the Attorney General with genocide, and we will be again doing that, and we'll be hoping that many of those in the Dáil and in the Shannon will raise the issue of allowing the Attorney General, allowing the Director of Public Prosecutions to look at this and see if in fact this was a breach of genocide law. That's important because if it is, there's no statute of limitations. Those who committed these crimes or incited them will be capable of being tried, and we'd be able to seize the assets of those who committed genocide in order to compensate the victims. Bear in mind now that all the victims, 6 years on, there still hasn't been a penny spent, despite tens of millions being spent on the inquiry itself. No victim has yet gotten compensation. Cathy McMahon, Joan McDermott, and others have died, and they continue to die without justice, and that has to end, Finbar. We've got to get justice now.
I would agree with you, and I'd like to see the outcome of this being that the files are not sealed, but unfortunately I have my doubts that at least for a temporary measure that they are going to be sealed until some new legislation can be brought in to undo the other legislation. Again, we're tight on time here, Fintan. I want to bring you back to talk about these issues more in a longer stint of half an hour or even a 45-minute stint. But for now, thanks a million for joining us.
Thank you too, Finbar.